Yeah. So, hi everyone, all the listeners. We have Hilary with us, a great friend, and I've known for a long time. So, introducing Hilary, she has almost 18 plus year of experience, primarily in the area of and that pertains to technical as well as commercial experience. Sustainability and emerging technology is an area where she has the target focus. And a couple of areas of interest include sustainability, consumer products, IoT, transportation, energy, and healthcare. Apart from having worked with organizations like General Electric and at present with Amazon, she is quite intimately involved with her work. And apart from those, of course, she also has a social side of it. She, I would say, has been also an entrepreneur through her activities, which she would talk about, where she still tries to promote STEM education, if I get it correctly, Hilary.
That's
Uh,
correct, Darn.
and I would say on personal front, if I have to talk about, both of us lost a family member of ours. That was 2 years ago for myself, Hilary, last year. But she is much more resilient than I am. And referring to international immersion, I would say that the peer group, the friends which we get, they act as a, I would say, great support system. So I would say she is much more resilient. I learned a lot of things, and in the course of this conversation, she will also talk about her India experience, which was, I would say, very enlightening for us, both for her as well as myself. So, welcome, Hilary. Thank you for taking out time. She is joining us from Washington. It's evening time, and she has got two kids and a lot of responsibilities. Out of that, she could carve out this time. So, very grateful for this.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sir, for having me. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon the time that you join us and watch this replay. I'm so excited to be here to have this very interesting dialogue with you.
Thank you, Larry. So, if you could just talk about your motivation to pursue a management program and how did you narrow down to these areas as your area of interest? If you could just talk about.
Absolutely. I will say for myself, it was quite a journey. I did not necessarily have a linear pathway. I knew from day one that I would get an MBA, a management degree. My initial interests were very much more on the engineering side. And so I initially pursued a mechanical and aerospace engineering degree from Cornell University. I went on to get a master's, and through that process, it really clarified for me that I wanted to be at the forefront of commercializing emerging tech, and so I decided to pursue an MBA at that time. So I pursued my MBA also at Cornell University, and fortunately for me, they had a opportunity to explore international immersions, and so I did do that my third semester of a four-semester program.
Okay. So, wonderful. So, how did you narrow down to this specific area of interest? So, you have a diverse experience, but primarily it has some kind of commonality, whether it was at GE or even presently in Amazon. So,
Yes.
how did you? What were the process methodology you went ahead with in identifying this?
So I initially had a focus in energy, broadly energy, and so I started my initial professional career exploring internships in the oil and gas sector. And though extremely interesting, and it's the depth that you can go in that sector alone, quite fascinating. I found myself wanting to be more at the forefront of sustainability, providing power that was sourced from renewable, whether it be solar, wind, or hydro. Um, and so I started to deviate from more of the traditional energy to more of the renewable energy focus. There were two companies at the time that were leaders in that space in the United States. I pursued both and decided to join GE back in 2010. But I will say that my international immersion experience was paramount in me taking the jump from more conservative, traditional energy roles and responsibilities into renewables. It was the colleagues and the peers that I met in France that encouraged me to pursue my passion and to not wait to jump into an exciting field.
Okay, okay, great. So, if you could just talk about your experience at GE licensing, you are also into evaluating some technology or new projects as part of your assignment at GE licensing.
Yeah, so my career evolved at GE. I was there for over 12 years, and I initially started in renewables, so focused in wind. And then from that vantage point, I realized the importance of how renewables integrated into the broader energy landscape. And so I then went on to join a group within GE Consulting where we modeled power assets globally and provided performance to banks, letting them know based upon projections in energy prices, projections in energy development and where assets were located, fuel prices, energy efficiency, what they would likely see from a performance standpoint. And then I grew from that into back to more traditional energy, working in gas power. I did strategic marketing for gas power business within GE. And then, taking a step out of energy, I joined the research center where I got to focus on emerging tech. And it was there that I ended up in roles that really focused on commercializing technologies like advanced manufacturing, Internet of Things sensors, and a plethora of emerging tech that came out of the research center. Most of which was technologies that the GE itself was not planning to monetize, and so we were looking for partners interested in leveraging our assets, our technical assets, to serve their customer base.
Oh, okay, great, great. So you also had a very interesting stint in India with a solar company. If you could just talk about, and then how did it build your perspective? Because I remember our walk through nearby IM when we were walking after our
Yes.
dinner, and then you were
So
quite shocked with a couple of things. So,
it's so funny how the world works, right? So I go to Essek in Paris, outside of Paris, France, in Sergi Pontois. I meet Siddharth. I go back to Cornell for my fourth semester. I expressed to my faculty how badly I would love to experience work in an emerging economy, focus on sustainability. My professor has a contact in Ahmedabad. Um,
okay.
where my friend Siddharth happened to be, at that time. And so I reached out to him, and everything lines up, and it makes sense for me to have this opportunity. And the company I was working for at the time was called Duron Energy. They were making point of use solar products for rural applications. So you would be able to have a small solar system, you would charge your phone, a fan. And so this was the product. And I learned a lot in that experience. I learned really that even if you have a great idea, it really is important for you to start with value proposition from the customer. We came with a very American centric view on what would be a good value proposition. And I think we were met up against reality of what at the time our customer or target customers could actually afford. But being at IIM and being close to IIM at the time, I was staying in Ahmedabad. I saw a lot of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs budding, and they were really starting with the customer, thinking about what price point made sense, what use case made sense, and building products that really fit the customer profile better than what we were trying to achieve at the time. So that was a big learning for me. Just really understanding, starting from the value proposition of the customer and going from there, as opposed to having a great idea and trying to force fit it on a market.
Okay. So which all places in India did you get to travel? And if you could just talk about any contrast which you saw in different parts of the country.
Yes, so was fortunate enough to do quite a bit of travel. Got to New Delhi, got to Goa, got to Rajasthan, um, Let's see, where else was I able to go? I think those are the main trips I took with my colleagues at the time, and it was just so impressive to see the diversity across India. Like I felt like I was in Hawaii when I was in Goa.
Okay.
um, and then Rajasthan had very much like an old world charm to it, beautiful architecture, and New Delhi was also fantastic. I made it up to Agra and I got to see the Taj Mahal. And so I did make sure I got to do quite a bit of travel while I was there. There are still places on my list that I would love to go to still, and so I'll have to make my way back to India at some point.
Sure, sure. So you are again most welcome. Now you have a lot of people, and family, kids, friends. Okay. With regards to your present activities at Amazon, where you are involved in a lot of business development role, how your experiences in Europe, Asia, and of course in US, they have shaped your strategies and what is the activities which you are doing, and then how those experiences, those cultural immersions, international experiences shape your decision making or strategies.
Absolutely. I would start from the fact that I lean into partnerships. Like being in a business development role, I definitely have the unique perspective that you don't have to do everything organically within your company to achieve your objectives. And so having that mindset of how can we do it best to serve the customer, whether it be internal development or, from my perspective, external, finding the right partners to bring our ideas to life. And I think having had that global experience, my network and my worldview is broader than just my domestic network. And so I'm able to think about companies in Europe or Asia and actually have colleagues I can reach out to who are within those companies to understand if there is a path forward for us to do something together. So it's been highly valuable to get that perspective, to understand how those companies work, understand their positioning in their own domestic markets, and how working together might make sense.
Okay, great. So what all product categories? Is it Amazon, the e-commerce platform, or the Amazon other aspects of the businesses which you are involved in?
So I focus mostly on devices. Um,
Okay.
and so these within the US, these are our Alexa products. So we have products within our home that we can speak to, get questions answered, help us order products. We have products in our vehicles. We have smart thermostats, smart plugs. And so my portfolio is the breadth of devices within Amazon. And my current role is to find um, businesses that would make sense for us to partner B2B relationships where we can serve both Amazon customers as well as their customer base with a great value proposition of an Amazon product. So,
Okay. Great. So, with the advent of new technology, and if I can say it, and I would be, of course, not incorrect in saying we are in the age of AI. And as far as Alexa is concerned and such products are concerned, Amazon has been at forefront of adopting these technologies. So, what you do see the future outlook with all these home automation and then using all these technologies?
yeah. So I'll share my perspective. I won't share anything that's unique to specifically Amazon. A lot of things that we work on, we're not allowed to share externally, broadly in such a manner. But from my perspective, I see a lot of opportunities at the nexus of energy, food, and water. We're going to see a significant growth in population in the next 2 or 3 decades on Earth. And we're going to see a significant demand for increase in food production, clean water, and renewable clean energy. And so finding efficiencies at the nexus of, for example, using efficiently water and energy to make food, you know, using efficiently water to produce power, using efficiently energy to produce water, is going to be extremely important. And so I think there's definitely some solutions that can be found in the home, thinking about how we can be more effective and efficient in how we leverage some of these natural resources. But also, I think broadly, how we as a society, as we as smart cities, as we as communities think about leveraging these natural resources. So these are some of the things that are most exciting to me, where I think there's significant opportunity, because there's some significant challenges that I foresee us globally having. So,
Okay, great. So, what are the various challenges you see on account of maybe, let's say, pace of technology adoption, and then maybe a kind of comparison between what you had seen in, let's say, economy like India and US? What are the challenges which you see, and then couple of maybe steps which maybe policymakers or even institutions which you could take, or even students, learners, in case they have to upskill themselves, could be
mhm.
benefited from taking those steps proactively?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is awareness, right? So I think we're finally at a point, I hope we're finally at a point where we no longer have broadly climate change deniers. We have seen an increase in catastrophic events that are related to climate change around the world. We're finding in the US specifically that certain insurance companies will no longer insure homes in certain regions because of the increase of fires in California or increase of floods in Florida. And so this is really hitting the bottom line of major companies and affecting the livelihoods of our fellow people. So I definitely think that we are at a point where we're no longer denying it, but I think the awareness is still there's still gaps in what the course that we're currently on in the context of what we will see of increased events and shortages we may have in food production or shortages we may have in clean water in years to come. So I think there's a lot of innovation to be done in connecting knowledge to end users about what some of their consumer choices mean to our global impact. So when you decide to buy certain food packaged a certain way, or certain products that may be like fast fashion, what does that mean for our greater ecology and the world? And so I think getting that insight directly to consumers will help maybe perhaps make more sustainable choices, which will then drive what companies produce, because hopefully you will see a shift in purchasing choices towards more sustainable choices. But right now, I think there is a gap in the layman understanding of what some of their choices may mean to our environment.
Okay, great. If you could also talk about your motivation in setting up Tinker and Fiddle. You ran it as a founder, and then promoting STEM among, I would say, schools. So if you could just talk about its motivation and what was the changes could you observe? Almost for 5 years you ran it.
Yeah, so Tinker and Fiddle was a passion project of mine. We focused on STEM education for youth. I worked with government and municipalities in my area, Greater New York area, schools, libraries, to set up programming and curriculum for children K through 8. And so we would do coding activities, math activities at the intersection of art. So this is what STEM is: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. It was a great endeavor. Unfortunately, I don't have the bandwidth anymore to have continued it, but I think the edu tech space is really growing. You're seeing, like, I don't know if you have Blippi or Miss Rachel, where you're at, if that's a popular choice for parents. But these are entities that have become viral here in the States, where parents are really seeking out fun, quality educational content for their children, and major companies are taking note and acquiring, and investing in these personalities and characters. So it's something that I still have a passion for. I think about how could I have made it bigger? How could I have scaled it better? But I had a lot of fun doing it while I did for 5 years. But my interest really came from wanting to make sure that folks saw how accessible technology can be, how fun it can be, And so bringing it in that format, I think achieved that on many fronts.
Okay, great. So, as far as, of course, I talk it in the context of India, the female participation in the science and technology area is a bit limited. How's the situation in US? And what are the various kind of trends you have been observing over the year? Of course, I would say that you were quite exceptional in that aspect and getting the opportunity, being able to, I would say, use opportunities given, and you are quite successful. But how's the trend in general?
Yeah, so we are seeing an increase in women entering STEM. We are still seeing challenges with women staying within tech. And this may be tied in some regard to biases that still are in the workplace. It also may be tied to the challenges around childcare. When we get to certain points in our lives and we think about starting a family or expanding a family and the challenges that may be there, we do see a lot of women leaving the workforce due to challenges with finding, figuring out how they're going to afford to send their children to daycare, or find ways to have their child cared for while they're at work. So um, until we have universal childcare, quality, affordable childcare, I think we're going to continue to see this challenge, at least in the U.S. I can't speak for globally, but we typically have about 4 months to get back after
Okay.
having our baby, and so it's a quick turnaround and a lot
Okay.
to try to manage.
Of course, I think the situation in India is not different, and I would say that many, I would say, important, capable individuals, because of having that responsibility of taking care of the kids, they have significant gaps. So, given my experience as a career coach, I see more and more female with almost 5, 6 years of career gaps, then trying slowly to join the workforce. Of course, I would say these problems are quite prevalent. I would say, in case India has to be seen. And that brings me to a very interesting perspective, which of course, COVID in a way caused it to happen, remote working.
Mhm.
So, what is your assessment? Let's say, in case organizations promoting remote working, will that be a kind of enabling mechanism which could increase participation of women in the workforce, and then maybe create bit of a balancing environment
I
as well
think,
as office work?
yeah, I think remote work really revolutionized how we work, and companies got to see that we were able to be extremely productive despite a pandemic. That workers were able to be very productive still working from their home environment, and I think both men and women and non-binary folks were able to find more balance with still being effective and impactful at work, but being able to manage some things at home in the household. Personally, I have an amazing partner, my husband, who really tries to share the load when it comes to household responsibilities with me. And I think things like that really allow for women to stay in the workforce, stay in technical careers, and things like remote work enable both men and women, everyone, to have more balance in both work and life. So I hope that companies continue to do that. I think that we're going to see more of a hybrid front. That's what I'm seeing mostly, amongst peers, that we go in 2 to 3 days a week in the office, and then we have some more flexibility, 2 days a week where we work from home. It makes sense sometimes to go in the office when you're meeting customers, when you're working closely with many colleagues. It's more effective to be in the office, but sometimes it's more effective to save that commute, save that 45 minutes driving each way. So
And you might have seen in, of course, I don't know whether you got an opportunity to be in Bangalore, but I think Trevor Noah was here for some session, and then he had, I would say, typical Bangalore experience, but despite it being I would say, startup capital of India, is notorious for traffic jams.
Ah,
So, and that is quite prevalent the whole day. Delhi, on the other hand, of course, has that problem, but it is during office hours. Bangalore has notorious this problem. So, of course, I can relate to it. That's why I moved to a remote mode and do all these consulting assignments.
this
But
is
yeah,
another benefit.
that's
Another benefit to the world. Less cars on the road. So remote work actually has a positive impact in that way as well. I went from filling my car up once a week, twice a week to once a month when we were in the thick of COVID and I wasn't driving in. So definitely another bonus in driving remote work.
great. So, couple of strategies which you adopted while being in with, let's say, SAC or India and elsewhere, which you utilize to get more and more understanding of the environment and then the know-how of the maybe, let's say, organization on the society in general, which you could like to share with maybe people who may like to make most out of their international immersion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting the international exposures I've had, whether it be through international immersion in school or through work, the travel and the diverse colleagues I've worked with across the world, is the importance of listening to the local regional voice. You can't be everywhere, and a lot of us work within multinational companies or conglomerates, where it really is important to understand from the local point of view what may be the best approach in that market, and having a multifaceted approach to how you roll out a product based upon what market you're trying to target. There's so much power in having that regional perspective across the globe. So I think for me, coming from the States and having kind of a monolithic US view and getting more exposure to Europe and Asia and South America, I've yet to make it to the continent of Africa. I hope to do that soon. But it really just opens up your perspective and allows for you to have a more intercultural mindset, leveraging the power of a broader high performance team as opposed to what you know to be true.
Agreed, agreed. So, in case I have to give some cues from my experiences, what I saw also benefits students, learners quite a bit is getting involved with the activities. Otherwise, usually what happens, students when they go for maybe let's say short duration, even exchange program or something similar. Usually, they would like to be a kind of, in case I can term it as a student tourist. So just taking up the classes for the sake of it, rather than getting assimilated in getting, I would say, involved in the student-related activities. Something which helps build more, I would say, grounded perception. Actual realities one get to know from that experiences, and of course getting to know even the faculty and not just the the close peer group, so that is also something which helps quite a bit. And I would like to maybe rephrase a statement which one of my IT batchmates, he is near Texas, Rohit Das. So what he says, and that is also quite resonates with my thought process. The access to information which we have nowadays, it is through, I would say, a lot of it is through biased channels. Even if we, let's say, take a lot of political activities which happen, maybe let's say India, of course, it is going for elections next year. US is going for the presidential election next year, and even Palestine and the Israel issues, of course, the unfortunate loss of children and women. But people, the channels, which are of course quite biased in some way, they give one perspective and then they don't give a broader perspective. So when we have such kind of multicultural environment, when you have access to people through direct means, and of course these sessions I'm going to conduct with friends, colleagues from different nationalities. Martin is going to come next week, so that helps us build or get a first level perspective from the ground. that actually what is the actual situation, what is the actual scenario which people are actually facing. So in a way, it also helps us assimilate in a much better way. And I would say that technology is a great platform which has, I would say, added to this experience. We can connect people through virtually and then get to know the realities. And also that adds to a lot of knowledge. So any suggestions? So we are almost at the end of the this session. Any suggestions which you would like to give to learners that given the changing circumstances, the technology becoming very ingrained in the
Yes.
so-called education system, what kind of strategies learners should adopt in order to maybe let's say narrow down to areas of studies? What is any suggestions you might have based on your experiences that how
Yeah,
the
I would
situations?
say, always leverage technology to be more efficient. If you can do something through Zoom and reach more people, or if you can do something as we're doing tonight on YouTube. I mean, historically, this would be an event you would set up in a physical space. You would have to advertise it for weeks. I would have to fly in. It's kind of ridiculous how we used to do things pre-COVID. And so I absolutely leverage technology to be more efficient about how you get your news, how you communicate with others, how you learn new things. But I think you cannot lose touch with the actual tangible connecting with people, and using critical thinking. One of the downsides about technology and efficiency is that sometimes we streamline things too much, and we're compounding our biases by only listening to um, the news channels or the communities that we most align with, and we're not hearing each other. And so I think definitely leverage technology to be more efficient and be more impactful, but also don't lose touch with that, with humanity, with your communities, your local communities, and the power of critical thinking, and being willing to have a civil discourse of people with differing views to get smarter and sharper and understand other perspectives outside of your own. So
Sure, sure. Great. So just one last something I just skipped my mind, which I wanted to ask. Of course, the cost of education is of course is becoming prohibitively high. In case I have to talk about IIM, so when you were there, when you were visiting IIM, we had you can say around slightly above half a million rupees, which we are paying for the education. Now it is almost 2.5 million rupees. And how's the situation in US as far as the education expenses are concerned? So
you
probably
know,
it could address that situation also.
I'm sure it's the same. My husband has already encouraged us to start saving for college for our 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 2 month olds and our 2.5 year old. Day one he was like, "We better start saving," and he's right. Because if we start saving now with compound interest, we will be in a better position than if we wait till they're 15, 16, and we're trying to figure out university for them. In the US, unfortunately, education is very expensive. There are some online programs that are more affordable. I myself am not in, like a master's program or things of that nature. I haven't been in for quite some time, but I do believe in continued learning, and I do courses through professional university credits. So I will do like a course at MIT. I'm taking a class right now for sustainability, which I find very very high value. It's a year long course. There's a project with 6 team members. It wasn't inexpensive, but it's a lot cheaper than the degree, some of the degree programs that you'll find in the U.S. But yeah, I do think education is quite a bit of an investment. I do think it pays off in the end. You should not be you should not just be getting education for the sake of education. Like, oh, I want to get an MBA because I think it's something good to have on my CV. But if you have a real intention around why you need a certain learning and understanding and experience, I always lean into continued learning and education. I think the value's there. Um, but be smart about the program you choose. Make sure that it is you're going to be on a path where you want to be. So make sure you think about what companies typically recruit at this university. What are the salaries typically of people who graduate from this university? What are the majors that are most aligned with what I want to do when I finish university? If I'm doing the entrepreneurship route, what resources do I have for starting a company within the university? And so, based upon what your end goal is, be really thoughtful about which university you decide to go to, because it is quite a big investment.
Agreed, agreed. Okay, so thanks, Hilary, for being with us, spending time and talking about your experiences in the energy sector at BP, General Electric licensing, as well as Amazon, and then a couple of promotional activities you did in terms of encouraging learners, students in the school to look towards the STEM side of the education. Thanks, everyone. Also, whoever is watching from wherever you are, feel free to let us know in case you have a questions and subsequently. And we'll again meet next week with a colleague of mine, supply chain expert, as well as from all the way from Latin America. Uh, so, uh, thanks, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.